Hello, welcome to this week's episode of What One Thing, One Business, One Story and One Lesson to take away in action every week for small business owners looking to grow. I'm Hayley Baxter.
And I'm Phil Davenport, and today we have the pleasure of talking to Kelly. And Kelly, we always like to start the pod with a few quick fire questions. So, first one, how long have you been in business?
Oh goodness, I guess it depends on the business, but for my main business it will be 17 years in November.
Wow.
And how many staff do you have?
I have 7 currently.
And do you sell business to business or business to consumer?
So in my main business it's a skin clinic and wellness centre, so it's mainly to consumers. We have people that come in and experience treatments with my team.
And are you the sole owner of the business or are you part of a team of directors?
I'm the sole owner.
And then last on our quick fire question, I feel like I should have cards and throw them down as we're doing the quick fire question. Did you found the business, did you buy it or did you join?
I bought a failing business and turned it around.
What led you to that point of buying that failing business? What did you do before? So on and so forth.
So I've been in the so-called beauty industry for about 30 years now and worked my way through from hands-on therapist to educator to manager. And before opening Taste Bar, I was spa director for some of the biggest hotels, Shangri-La, Four Seasons, working out in Asia and the Caribbean, having an absolutely wonderful time. Let's just say hotel life is a life choice. And it got to the stage where, as a young single woman, living out in Asia, it was, I'm either going to be here for the rest of, my days, or, do I want to keep doing 18, 20-hour days, 6 days a week? Is that really what I see for my future? So I was very lucky in that the hotel group, I wanted to become a consultant. The hotel group championed me and I became Shangri-La's, pre-opening spa consultant, going to all of their new openings, training their teams. But I got to live in the UK. I was loving life. It was the perfect job. And then we hit some sort of global crisis in 2008. And all of a sudden, my one client could not afford or justify to the board flying me from the UK and cancelled, and they were my only client because I didn't need any more. So all of a sudden I didn't have a business and I didn't know what I was going to do, and went down a YouTube hole as you do and suddenly came across businesses for sale, and I clicked because there was one that was local to me. I thought, oh, that's my area, I'll click there. And then clicked it. Oh, I know where that is. Within a week, I was viewing a salon. I'd never wanted to own my own beauty salon. I was not one of those girls that dreamt of it from the minute they started training. But, here we are 17 years later, going strong.
So, as a consultant, you were kind of, I think they call it IR35 now or whatever, don't they? So you were kind of an employee of that big business, but as a separate consultant, so you were actually self-employed, but
yeah,
they were
pretty much. So they were my biggest client. They, had me on a retainer that I would go and do all of that. So, it was a nice gig.
I think as business owners, but certainly when we first start out in our kind of business to business, we tend to have that one golden goose. And we all tend to think, well, this will never go away. This is the future for me. This is brilliant. I'm just going to keep doing this. And then I'll retire.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So did you have any other clients at all, Kelly, or was it just purely?
No, and it was so new as well because I think I'd literally just stepped into it in like the April of 2007. So it was just starting. I just bought the house back in the UK and settled. And then, all of that sort of happened, and I found a little bit of consulting work locally. I managed to find another company that was hiring, so I did actually get a PAYE job as a project manager, which I've never seen ever since. So whether this, how this just appeared at the right time, but again, unfortunately, with people not spending money on building their big spas at that time, it wasn't the most stable area to be in. So hence why looking for something else.
So what do you do first with a failing business? Where do you begin?
Wow, yeah, exactly. I mean, it had been very successful, but it had been successful because it was the 90s, it was the early 2000s, and people had lots of disposable money and would just throw money at this business to have the lovely treatments. And what happened was, as the recession kicked in, people were getting a lot more discerning with where to spend their money. Standards and expectations were growing, and the previous owner was very much hands up. I don't know how to run a business. I'm a great therapist, I'm a great doer, and I've been really lucky with the last 10 years, but I'm not a business person. And when I walked into that business, I mean, you know, really not to my taste or anything, Grecian and, you know, etched into the wall and all sorts. I just sort of looked at it and looked at the books and looked at everything and thought, everything here is screaming, run away. But I just knew that I could turn it around. And the fact that she was a sole trader, so all of the debt that the business had was with her. It wasn't actually, so I didn't really get much of a business. She took the most loyal, profitable clients with her to leave when she went to do it back from home again. So I knew I was sort of starting from scratch, but I had a few team members there. It was a great location, and I knew that I would be able to make it work. So the first thing, the most important thing that I had to do was to try and change the reputation, the standards from the team. You know, they'd received no training, they hadn't had any nurturing, they were just left to their own devices. So I'd already gone in and spied and had treatments with them, and so had my mum. And she came back with her, you know, where my mum's been in my life and had treatments for so long. I think she was a worse critique than me. Well, she didn't ask me this and she didn't say that. So yeah, the first thing was just to take stock, and I promised that I wouldn't rush in and do anything rash. After the first, I'll never forget it, the first Saturday working in there, I phoned my family and was like, I cannot stare at this Grecian, this all over these walls. We've got to paint. We've got one day tomorrow. We've just got to get magnolia on these walls. I can't do it.
So, I mean, you clearly mystery shopped. You're kind of not happy with the walls. Did you walk in there with a clever business plan, or did you think, you know what, I've launched however many dozens, salons at posh hotels, and I know how to do this. This is just going to go straight through the run book.
I did both, and neither worked. I had the big posh, I've still got it. I've still got my business plan that I presented to the bank manager to get the money to pay for the business. I didn't have any savings. I was refused, and, you know, again, went back with a very low offer for what I could afford that I'd scraped from family and things. I had this amazing business plan that we were going to be doing, you know, well, we'll easily do this many facials a month and this much and that, and we're going to be bringing all this in. It's easy. I don't think we're still even hitting those numbers. You know, the delusions of what you think can happen and the reality at the beginning, that excitement and all of the rest of it can be really quite overwhelming. But also, yeah, I mean, I knew what I was doing. I've run multi-million-pound budgets for these hotels. I've opened up places all over the world. I've had teams of 200. Now I've got 3. This is going to be easy. And it's been like the hardest and the most up and down journey ever, that never goes exactly how you think it's going to go.
So talk to us a little bit about some of those highs and lows, because I always think that's the bit, because that happens. Every business, whoever they are in the world, I believe, has that ebb and flow, yes, whatever you want to call it. And I don't think it's shared enough. So if you're happy to, I'd be really interested just to hear about some of those highs and lows.
Definitely. I think for me, I mean, there's lots, you know, you have good parts, you have people that leave, you've got team, you have struggles. But for me, I think the crux came about 7 years in to having the salon. We were really successful. We were making a lot of money. I had a big team, but I wasn't happy. I was really stressed out with the business. I had a lot of team issues. They were driving me crazy. There was always something. There was always something. There was always a drama. It was either, something that I was always dealing with, and it just got to that stage where I was like, is this it? Is this really what it's like? I should be really enjoying this, but this business is making me miserable. I feel so tied to it. I'm not enjoying myself. Do I give up or do I carry on? And, when you look at it from the outside and everybody sees this successful business, you feel a little bit like, God, what's wrong with me? Why am I, poor little me type thing? And it's like, and I think that was the biggest thing at that point. I started working with a business coach, which I'd never done before, and just changed my world and my life. And that's when I realised that as a business owner, if my business doesn't make me happy, especially if you've got a team, if you've got a team of people, your responsibility as a business owner is to them. My team are my clients now. So it took me a while to realise that if I can't be happy, how can I make them happy? And if they're not happy, how can they serve my client and the end user? And it's like it all stems, they always say, doesn't it? It all stems from the top, but to actually live and see that and the difference it makes when I started taking responsibility and looking at what I really needed my business to look like in order for me to keep it, I guess, if it was going to be in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I think we talk to business owners all the time, and as businesses expand, because we've not planned it out, because we've not put things into boxes and put roles, but we actually end up building a bigger and bigger prison that we can walk around, and we don't realise it until we have that one moment. What was that one moment for you? What kind of triggered that? Was there a certain incident, or how did it feel?
It would have been it was a staff member leaving that came out of the blue maybe, but I took very, very personally. It wasn't the best ending. And I think that was the catalyst. It was like, for everything I've done, everything I've put in. When I really look at it, it was my fault they left because I wasn't nurturing and supporting them in the way that they needed. But at the time, ego kicks in and it's all, well, what have they done to me? And how dare they, everything I've given to them? And it's like, well, actually, you need to take responsibility for that because, I played a role in that happening. But that was the catalyst. It was, the team side of it has been the best part of the business for me, but also the hardest part of the business for me. Managing people isn't easy. And I think that's one of the biggest things, like you said, Phil, that we don't know what we're doing. I fell into this salon ownership. I did it because I didn't have a job. I knew I didn't sit there and plan, I want a salon, it's going to look like this, I'm going to have that many people. And I didn't plan that vision. I just said, I'm going to be a business owner. And now for me, because I've got a second business where I work as a business coach and I help other salon owners get out of the space where I was with their team. You're on the tools, you get really busy, so you think, oh God, I need to take someone on. But do you actually want to be an employer?
But you're absolutely right. It's a huge part of your business, and it's a skill that I think many people believe that they should just be able to do it because you've dealt with people all your life. You do it from being, the very first time you go to nursery. But actually, it is a very different skill set to going out, setting up a business, going out, getting clients, serving those clients, meeting the needs of those clients, even doing like the back office admin stuff and all of that comes with running a business. When it comes to the people side of it, it's just like a whole different ball game, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the truth is, you can't control people. People are going to do what they want, aren't they? And I also think as people managing teams, sometimes you forget that. I believe anyway that all you can do is create an environment and standards and, boundaries, I suppose is the word it would be, to, just so that they can work within that framework.
And this is something that absolutely nailed me, and I think nails all of us business owners that have maybe come from a background where we're from a working family, if you will do, where we're used to kind of the employee. Did you work out what margin you were going to get from each employee? And did you work out your numbers, or were you like me and you went, Guy, you know what, we are so busy, I need more employees?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's the thing, just touching back on what Hayley said, I am that one person. When I opened the salon, I was like, I am not doing any treatments. I stopped being hands-on so many years ago that isn't where I get the joy. I love managing and, looking after the business side, but not necessarily the numbers. So to come back to Phil's point, no, I didn't. So when I was setting my prices for the business, I did what every salon, well, I won't be that general, but 99.9% of salons do, and probably most other businesses, they look around at what people are doing and they go somewhere in the middle. So yes, margins were non-existent. When we were at the beginning, it was all okay. And, I was definitely overstaffed, but we were still making money. But as things started to squeeze, and even if we look at, the dreaded COVID and all the rest of it world, I mean, you're talking only a few years ago, there was still stuff in my business that I had to change because I was realizing that I was still doing things a little bit wrong with my numbers and my margins, giving something away for free because everybody else does it. Ended up realizing that those people I was actually paying people £1 to have their nails done if they had a free removal. And I've been doing it for like 10 years.
That is such an incredible point. What drove you to look into the numbers, or what would you recommend to a new business owner who's maybe like ourselves, Kelly, and let's be honest, we're both in the same boat here. You've got some employees, things seem to be going well, but all of a sudden you're starting to feel the pinch and you're thinking, this isn't right. I'm not as busy as we were a month ago, but I should still be profitable. How did you kind of come to that conclusion, and what were the kind of first numbers that you dug into, or how did that journey work for you?
So I think the first way that I started to look at it, and to be fair, I still do as a general, like, quick look picture, is speaking with my accountant, because again, I'm not one to go in, I don't want to sit there and list everything I put in a treatment and how much each cotton wool pad is and da-da-da. I know that's what I should be doing, but it's, I've got a lot to do as a business owner. So I sat with my accountant and we basically looked at what is my break-even point? What do I need to do to open the doors if I don't have one client, come through that door? This is how much money it's going to cost me each day, so that then I could base my pricing on that plus whatever profit I wanted to be making. That's where it sort of started from, so that I could start to look at it and then look at my costs and where was I overspending, and did I really need to have £8,000 worth of stock on the shelf when I have got next day delivery for most of my suppliers. Learning those, yes, it all looks pretty and great, but, I'm not Harrods, so I don't need to have all of that there. So it was learning things like that, make the money that you've got work for you rather than having it sitting there. It's a much more different world now that you can get things quicker. And again, a lot of people are shopping differently. So do you need to carry everything so much and have that much stock? It's not like we've got loads of space. So it was starting to look at things in that way that made the difference. And then I was able to start looking at, well, actually, I need to decipher this much away. The dreaded, oh my God, it's VAT return. I've got to pay the VAT. Where is that? It's like, well, that's sat in a separate account now. I'll cipher it off every week. That goes straight into a VAT pot. It's learning those things that made my life and my relationship with the numbers, but it not being my strongest point. But it doesn't have to be scary. There are simple ways to do it. And if you've got accountants and bookkeepers and things like that, then get them working for you, because that's their expertise. Lean on people that can help you. You do what you do, so let the others help you, and that's the biggest thing, really.
Yeah, that's so I'm an accountant. I run an accountancy practice. I don't know if you knew that or not, but it's absolutely everything you've just said there is so true. And I'm going to quote the bit, it doesn't have to be scary, it doesn't, and lean on your accountant and bookkeepers. Because I think I speak to so many business owners and they're almost afraid to ask questions, or to, they feel like they're intruding or, overstepping the mark by asking questions of their accountant and bookkeeper. And sadly, there are many out there that probably have curated that feeling. But there are many, many out there that are not like that, and that want to help and support businesses in exactly the way that you've just talked about. And you could see from the way that you just described that journey, the difference it's made to you and your business. Yeah. And that will have affected your personal life as well, because if you're running a business, it's not just the business, is it? It exactly. affects everything. So that's really good, and it is so important. And I often think people, particularly at the beginning of a journey, don't feel like they're big enough to be organised in that way. Oh, it doesn't matter, I'm only doing a bit of this, I'm only doing a bit of that. But actually that's the best time to get to grips with it, because you've got time to get to grips with it. You've got all of that behind you, so that when you do get bigger and busier and so on, you've got it nailed. Whereas otherwise you don't, you get in a mess. I see it time and time again, as you can tell. I'm just going to go off on a tangent now, so I'm going to stop.
But there's nothing worse. I remember sitting there at my dining table when me and my husband were first dating, and he'd come round and I'll be like, I just need to finish my VAT return, and I'm trying to enter stuff, and it's like 4 hours later, and I know at the very beginning a lot of people are like, oh, I can't afford this, or I don't have the money for that. But it was one of the things that I was like, I'm not good at this and I'm getting this wrong. So I will find the money. I will get in that treatment room and do 3 massages if it means I've not got to sit there for 3 hours, like, to try and put my receipts in order and do a VAT return. So that's the biggest thing, I think, is to have that support when it comes to things like numbers.
That mindset's amazing.
There's 3 pieces that really kind of resonated with me there. I mean, the first one, like stock levels, and suppliers are always really cheery about how much we're going to sell next month. They're always, look, you could take 10 of these on, but why don't you take 100? Because if you take 100, I'm going to give you such a great deal, and these are flying. And I tell you what, Kelly, you are the best saleswoman we've got out there. You're going to fly. And then the second piece that really resonated from me from Hayley, and this is maybe a little bit of a brutal point, but I think it's a great test of your accountant, your bookkeeper, probably your beautician, to say to them, actually, I'm looking for more. Can you give me some more advice? Can you help me out more with this? Because I think that we, and I'm going to include us all here, as great business owners, we love it when somebody asks us to generate more value, because we've got 1,000 suggestions and we really want to dig deeper onto, if you say, okay, what they're eating, what's the diet like, what's your sleep like, what's your lifestyle like, what's your stress like, and we want to dig into that, and we want to help them out, because we want to then use them as a shining example of saying, look, this is what we can do for people because we're so incredible. And if you are asking any of your suppliers that, and they come back to you and say, well, I don't really know, you should just use a moisturiser, I think that's the point where you say, actually, I've picked the wrong person here.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't be afraid to move if you have. I'm dealing with a coaching client at the moment whose accountant is, not the most helpful, and she's asking for the advice and not getting it. And I can't understand what happens and what her accountant is doing and sharing with her. And I said, look, you need to ask these questions. And if you're not getting the result, then don't be afraid to change, because you're paying for a service. And, if you're not getting what you need, then you need to go elsewhere. And it's no disrespect against them. You just might not be the right fit.
And I think people forget that particularly with accountants. I think people are scared of them. That's sometimes the impression I get. I'm like the least scary person ever, I think. But no, you're absolutely right. And also the thing that people don't realise is actually it's quite straightforward to change accountants. And usually they do a lot of the legwork for you. So I just thought it was worth putting that in there.
And I think we talking, I'm part of a peer group. I think that a lot of us have benefited from talking to other business owners. And I think it's about where you sit on a rank of priorities for your customer, isn't it? And where you sit on a rank of priorities for your supplier. So are they Asda and they've just got 1 million people and they're just doing it as cheap as possible? Because if you were looking for, I'm not really good on posh supermarkets, Waitrose, Ocado, Marks and Spencer's, and you shop at Asda, you're probably just in the wrong place and they're the wrong fit. And I think it's like you said, Kelly, it's not that either of you's wrong, it's just that you're not finding the balance that you were hoping for there.
Yeah, and that's also the same with your team. And that was a big lesson that I learned, was that not everybody is going to be the perfect fit for your team, and that's okay. But if they're not, they need to move on.
And that is another thing that, and I know I've been guilty of this in the past, that I think, particularly when it's your own business and you perhaps don't have the team, like the support of a HR team or something like you would do perhaps in a more corporate environment, is you can bury your head a little bit in that, 50% of somebody's better than 0% of somebody, and they're okay. It's just these little bit, and you kind of like kid yourself because just because you don't want to. I suppose you don't want to face it. You don't want to face the conflict or go through that process because that takes time and energy. But I think it's important to remember that actually going through that pain points of doing that, like you've shared with your journey, is the outcomes will be better and you'll end up probably happier because you're not dealing with somebody that you're not that keen on. Your customers will be happier because you've got the right people in front of them, and all in all you're going to end up in a better position with a better business.
Yeah, definitely. And the rest of you, it's not fair on the rest of your team. I mean, that's what I learned, is that all of the energy and the focus and everything that you spend on this person that maybe isn't behaving in a way that is right for your business, that takes you away from the people that are doing really well. So you probably spend less time on them because they're great, they're just getting on with it, they're doing really well, but then they're neglected, they're not praised, they're not. And that was a real learning point for me, was when I started learning about human behaviour and how to create that environment. You need a safe space. Basically, people want to feel secure. They want to feel trusted, respected and appreciated. And if you can create that environment, then you're onto a winner. But as soon as you've got people in there that challenge that environment and, the mistrust comes in or people don't feel appreciated, then that balance goes, and then that's when the team dynamics go. And a lot of the time, I'll be the one that makes the place uncomfortable. I'll do something that, it's, with me, and I've written about it in my book, I call it hyacinth behaviour. For those people that remember Hyacinth Bouquet from the 90s TV show, she was like, whatever she had to do to make herself feel comfortable. And that can happen with team members. And it's not that they're bad people. It just means they're not the right fit. So when I took the decision to move the business in a direction that would make me happy, so I could make them happy, we wanted to move away from beauty, get away from nails, lashes, tans, and go into more profitable treatments like skincare, wellness, and advanced. And I had a few members of the team at the time that were like, well, I love doing all my beauty treatments. I'm not happy with this. And it's like, well, I know that they're not going to be able to support me in the vision and the rest of the team, but it doesn't mean they're bad people. Consequence of us moving through that journey, I supported them in being able to then start their own business. And a lot of the people that used to work with me do actually work across the road, which for most business owners is like their biggest nightmare. And yes, it was when it first happened, but I realised that I'm bigger than that, and that actually we can support each other. They do treatments we don't do, we do things they don't do, and our clients love us all. So they can bounce. So it ends up, it might not have got there that cleanly at the beginning, but that's where, when you let the ego out of it and you suddenly, look at it from a logical perspective, then actually we've got the best of both worlds.
I think that's the attitude of plenty, which is probably not a default British attitude. The default British attitude is probably, there's this little pie and I don't want to share it with anybody, and if anybody else has got a piece of it, then I need to try and bring that back in because they're going to be my enemy. Versus, I don't want to do that. That's not part of my business. However, we might be able to collaborate, or between us we might, how car garages are all flipping next to each other because they know that the buyer wants to come out and see 4 car garages, and it's actually more beneficial for the 4 of them to be sat next to each other. And of course, always complimenting your opposition or your competitors or whatever you like to call them, rather than going against. I'm really interested in. It feels like there was a marked change in your business where you kind of said, right, I've built this prison, I'm making money, but I'm not happy. And then you've talked about creating a vision, and I'm assuming that you've got goals behind that and targets behind that. What was the light bulb moment? What was the click that took you from a business owner that was kind of making money, but I sense rolling with the punches, to a business owner that managed to extract yourself and maybe have a bit more of a bird's eye view? I hate saying this, but I'm going to say it. What changed you, Kelly, from working in the business to working on the business?
I think the simple answer is because I worked with a coach that showed me how to do that. And, he always says that I'm his top student because I actually implement. And now working as a coach, I totally get what he meant about that, because you can be told all the things in the world, but it was when I actually did start to look at myself and what I wanted, and that I realised that I was responsible for everything. As the business owner, I'm responsible for the good, the bad, the ugly. It all comes down to me. So that's a hard pill to swallow when you especially when my biggest thing at the time was staff problems, and to think that, well, I'm causing all my staff problems, it's them problem.
Always their fault, Kelly,
Why are we not as busy? It's the economy. Clients aren't spending, it's the economy. It's like, no, that's can be a factor at some points, but no, there's something going on. So the biggest change was literally that, looking at myself, learning how to look at the big picture and have that bird's eye view, to step out and not be so, reactive to the day-to-day, which still happens. It's business, it's life. I'm not saying it's all perfect and roses all the time, but I've got tools now that I can recognise when something's going on, and I will be able to deal with it, whether that's with me personally or with one of my team. So, we have that check-in, and it makes it easier to understand and follow those goals, but have that vision and come back to it and say, are we actually working towards that? Is this where we want to be? What are we trying to achieve? And the biggest thing for me, because my big vision for me to be happy, I realised, was I didn't want to be in my business, and not because they're all horrible and I don't want to be near them. I love that business, but I don't want to be the one sat there running it anymore. That's what I knew that I needed to do more. I wanted to grow them and work with them, but I didn't want to be tied to the business every day doing the day-to-day. So then I had to put a plan in to sort of make myself redundant. So now we've got the systems, we've got the processes, we've got everything there so that my team can run the day-to-day of my business. And the biggest cliche word, if you like, because we're throwing them out today, is I became the leader of my business. I was no longer just trying to manage it. And I didn't really realise there was a difference between leading and managing. And I think that's when things started to change.
That was deep. That was deep. So we're building towards the crescendo now. Not to put too much pressure, Kelly, I apologise there. So this is the what one thing. So we count that there's 4 levers, but I mean it's up for debate. So one of those levers is to bring on new customers. One of them is to increase your service or revenue to existing customers. One of them is to cut costs, and one of them is to improve efficiency internally. What would you say was the biggest one thing that another business owner could emulate or replicate from your journey that would significantly kind of pull one of those levers and really help them to rocket forward?
For me, I suppose it would fall more into the efficiency internally. It's really understanding your business and what it needs to do and to be, because you can have all the people in the world, you can have all the clients in the world, but if the core doesn't work, then it's not going to be there long term, or it might be, but it just won't be giving you what you want from it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you're saying, and not always the brightest bulb in the chandelier here, but I think you're saying to look at the operational side of the business. So probably, what are your margins? How many customers do you need? That whole piece about where you sat down with your accountant and looked at day one of the business. How much money do we want to bring in? And then I would guess that the second conversation you had with the accountant was, how the hell are we going to bring that business in? How can we guarantee it? And then everything flows from understanding your numbers. That's what I feel. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the underlying. And then you can start looking at, well, exactly, what do we need to do to bring it in? Am I doing this? Do I need to bring someone else on? If I'm going to bring someone else on, what are the values of my business? What type of person? I'm not just going to do what we all do, like, oh God, I've got a column that needs doing. Let me just bring a therapist in so that she can go and do the treatments. But are they the right fit? And to actually think about the values of your business from the beginning, even if it is just you on your own, act as the CEO of that business. Look at it from a different angle, not as you being in the trenches, but eventually have this little helicopter view of what you want it to be. And if you're going to bring someone else on, what do you need to be earning? What do they need to be earning? What do you need to be doing from a sales perspective? And even if it's just you, start writing your processes of what you do, so that when you bring that person on, then you can go, this is how I do it, or this is how we do it here, so that then it just will make your life so much easier than having a million people doing loads of different things and then you trying to get control afterwards. That's the harder way to do it. Believe me.
I like that a lot. I sometimes wonder whether I'm going into split personality syndrome, but I try to think about, if I'm on a project, then I'm Phil the engineer. I'm not Phil the business owner or Phil the manager, I'm Phil the engineer. But then I need to think, well, as Phil the business owner, is this the best use to my engineer's time? Is he doing a good job? And then when I do the sales, okay, Phil the business owner is looking at Phil the salesman. Is this the best use of the time? How are they accountable? And just as you're saying there, you're writing down that process, I think phenomenal. I also think secretly, Kelly, that you want to say, take on a business coach to help you, guide you through that process.
Definitely.
And to get that mentor. And we've had so many people say that. And I think you're completely right. And I think that moves us beautifully into what I like to call the shameless plug. So I'd love you to tell us, Kelly, who would you like to connect with? Who is your ideal client? And if they've loved listening to you as we have today, how would they get in touch with you?
So, at the moment, my coaching business is aimed at salon, spa, clinic, hairdresser, people in that industry that have a team and that are struggling with either issues with their team, or they're struggling because they are the person that is doing everything. But I've worked with a sommelier, I've worked with an electrician, so it's, at the end of the day, people are people. It's not industry specific, but if you want help in building that culture and that team environment so that you can take that step out of the day to day so that you can look at working on your business to grow your business. But at the moment, you're the person that's bringing in the most business. Then that's what I help people do, is put those systems, processes in and build a culture so that they actually enjoy being an employer again.
And how would they get in touch with you? What's the best way?
So I'm on Instagram at I am Kelly Shaw, Facebook, and my website is kellyshaw.com.
Thank you so much for joining us, Kelly. It's been amazing speaking to you.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely fun.
What an incredible podcast with Kelly Shaw, and her what one thing of removing herself from the business and becoming a more business owner, and then I would say repeating that process and becoming a business coach was really powerful to me.
Yeah, I think it's the thing that as business owners, it's very cliche. I feel like it's cliche now because everybody that I speak to in my world, it's very out. That's what people say you should be doing and you should do. But I think, and it's like when we talk about getting a coach, and you almost resist it. And it's like, why do we resist doing the thing that ultimately we then accept will help us? But it's like that. It's the journey you go on, isn't it? Because you think you know better. You think you know best.
I think it was really interesting because right at the end, Kelly kind of said the thing that to me is the absolute truth, is that you can coach any business because, and I'll grant you that having somebody who's been in a niche or having somebody who's done it really recently is great, but a little bit like when you watch Dragon's Den, they're not bothered about your type of business. They want to know the key numbers, they want to know your revenue, they want to know your sales plan, and then your character as to whether they can work with you. But those are it doesn't feel like it seems to matter what niche your niche is. And I think for a lot of us as first time entrepreneurs, where we've not grown up in a family of entrepreneurs, we've not been in a role where somebody has mentored us to start our own business, and then we set off as a exceptional engineer, if you will do, whether that's a hairdresser, whether it's a building inspector, whatever it is. And then, like you say, we all start to go on that journey where we, I would say 9 times out of 10, find success through bringing a coach on board and finally understanding what working on the business actually means, what the nitty gritty of that is, rather than just this great big phrase that everybody keeps telling you.
It's very true, and I suppose the truth is, and this is kind of summarising what you were saying there, business is business, and whatever kind of business you're in or whatever kind of niche you're in, the factors that make a successful business are the same, whether that's a business that's turning over 20 grand or whether that's a business that's turning over 20 million. There are key things that make those two businesses successful, and key things that I believe should be being done in both of those businesses, and that's why it's sort of universal, and that's why those things don't matter about what kind of industry you're in or what you're trying to do. Yes, of course, if you're working with somebody who understands that industry, there might be added benefits of that, but fundamentally the success of business is the same.
Yeah, your cost of client acquisition is going to be a number that you need to be aware of. Your revenue that you want to come away with, and not revenue, but the amount of profit that you want at the end of each month is going to be a number.
Yeah.
And that is going to be based on your margin and your number of customers and your cost of goods sold and all of these things. I think one of the biggest jumps is to realise that you aren't an incredible accountant or an incredible IT engineer or an incredible beautician or salon owner, but you're just a business owner and you, whether you like it or not, you're going to have to, and whether you sit down with your accountant or whether you do it yourself, you're going to have a look at those spreadsheets and have a look at those numbers if you want to maximise your profits, because there'll be a lot of people that are incredible salespeople and don't actually ever need to look at the numbers because they just sell so fluidly, just naturally with huge margin. And I think that's who we all aspire to be, don't we?
Yeah, it's true. And what I thought was interesting about the conversation with Kelly, which we haven't had yet so much on any of the episodes we've recorded, is the impact of the team and how the effect that can have on you as a business owner, because it's like a whole other world, isn't it? And I think that was what was really interesting about Kelly's story, is the journey not only that she went on as the business owner, but the journey that she had to go on as the business owner about her team and how that interaction needed to be, and that actually she needed to change, which sometimes we, you know, just as humans, we don't like to think that about ourselves. So that was something that really stood out for me in that episode. What stood out for you?
I think that's a beautiful point, that one of the things I've really found tricky to do was to create any kind of vision, or even a year plan, a 3-year plan, anything like that. And I think one of the things that maybe holds me back as a person is that, you know, once you've created that vision or that 3-year plan, well, now I need to break it down into smaller points, and I need to work out what it actually means as a practicality. And now I need to talk to my staff about it. And there is that chance that my best member of staff doesn't want to follow that vision, doesn't have the same 3-year ambition, and is going to resist it. And I think subconsciously that holds a lot of us back from doing that 3-year plan, because it might be that I'm going on that journey, we don't have the same team at the end of the journey as we had at the start.
Yeah, it's all that. It's the same. It all comes back to the same. Putting yourself out there. It's making yourself vulnerable, isn't it? That's the truth of it, a little bit. I think that's what feeds into that for me, anyway.
Yeah, I think making yourself vulnerable, realising that you want the best for your staff, but they might not be going all the way on the journey as you do. And I think Kelly beautifully put that she helped her staff go to another salon, etc., etc. But they were just, they didn't want that life, and so she would have made them unhappy by doing her vision, or they would have made her unhappy by doing their vision, and something had to move on that.
It is. It's really a really good episode, a really good story. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope you found one thing to help move your business forward.
And if you did, please do us a favour, share the episode on LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever yourself and people you think will get some value from this episode are. And we'll see you all next time on What One Thing.